at everyone. Woo-hoo. Gotta get everything set up just so. All right. It's gotta be just right.
Oh, it says I'm live now.
Yeah. There we go. All right. Cool. Can I go to the stream? Also, yeah. No, that wouldn't be it. Just let me pull it up. YouTube. I have to get started, and then I can find what I'm looking for and share that. I don't want to hear myself twice. Okay, cool. That's what I want. Copy that. Space. Paste. Copy. And go. There we go. There's that. And then there's this. And we got all that situated then over here. Cool. Oh, it's just showing a little pop-up. This is live right now. It's always so exciting. Okay. All right. Share that. Share not as myself. Or not as the, what do you want to call it? Okay. In public. There we go. Hooray. Huzzah. Okay. Woohoo. Yee. Haha. Okay. So we got all of that. In fact, actually, I could pull that up, but I'm not going to. All right. Cool. Oh! It's Kelric. Hello! I just now saw that you joined us. Hello. Good to hear from you. I've got
Hey, Calric, what up, brother?
Hey.
Hey.
I'm gonna pull this over here. I'm gonna make sure that you are front and center and not something else. And it may show Discord for a brief second. I realized I didn't get this popped up in the right place before I went into the pure talking screen. Oh dear.
Uh-oh.
Oh no!
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna send it over to Tim, and it's just gonna be a picture of Discord. Wait. I don't have to do that. I can do this. No one knows. Okay, we're good. Okay, great. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. So, hello everybody. And welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on your thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, owner of United Gamers Nation, and gathered with me today is the wonderful Tim Denock, owner of Break the Meta LLC. And today we're excited because today is the day where we've got something planned for you. We've been thinking about a topic and we want to share said topic with you. So how have you been? Oh, okay. Just I thought that was Kelric, and that was you responding to Kelric. Was like, and now for this great moment where I'm gonna turn and look and see what's being. Oh, never mind. It's something that Tim said. Whoops. But how are you, Kelric? While we're at it, I mean that's a great question to ask. Good to see you again. But yeah, so today we have planned to talk about what to do when you've been hurt, when you're feeling hurt, when somebody has hurt you. How do you respond to that? How do you grapple with that feeling and stuff? Doing good and dandy. Good. Refined and dandy. Excellent. So, Tim, I want to kick this off to you. We're doing, or since you just mentioned that, I'm doing good particularly. Kelly, thank you for asking. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just trying to figure out
How you want to kick it off?
Huh?
Or I was assuming that you were thinking about how to kick it off is what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, it's just something that I've been going through for the past several weeks, and man, every single day I wake up and I go on social media, and it's so like that blog post I made about division and trying to be the rallying voice because I can see both sides and I hurt for all different sides and it's like, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
And it seems like there are so many people that are hurt and there are so many people that are getting hurt because people are hurt and they don't know how to deal with it. And yesterday, Ariane and I got into an argument about some stuff, and it was a situation. It's just like all the other situations where one of us or really both of us were feeling hurt about things, and because we were both feeling hurt, we didn't feel heard. And because we didn't feel heard and we were hurt, we responded in all the secondary emotions like anger and resentment and frustration. But we'll get into that. So I just wanted to process it because I feel like a lot of people never explore healthy ways to process hurt and also how to respond to people who are hurt. Because I know growing up, there was lots of hurt in my family, and it was never processed in a healthy way for the most part, or at least I don't think so.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of crap that I got, and I say crap that I got, like secondary insecurities and stuff that I absorbed or I acquired or attained, or stuff that developed in me as a kid through hurt.
Yeah.
It's almost like I inherited it from my parents because they had the same kind of hurt that was never dealt with, you know? And so, I mean, it is possible to put a stop to hurt, but it's got to be very intentional. But anyways, that's what I want to talk about tonight.
So before we get into that, I want to do something a little bit unusual here. I realized before we began, we forgot to pray before we started this,
gosh.
and I am not going to go into this conversation without some prayer. So let me take a second here on Thought Raid to get us started right. So, Father, I just welcome your presence to be with us right now as we go into this topic about hurt and how to handle it. I thank you, Lord, that you anoint Tim and I to present what you place on our hearts to everyone that's watching. And I just thank you, Lord, that you are in the center of this and you help us to bring it out fully, that whoever needs to hear this will hear it and that we'll have the right words to say at the right time. Thank you, Lord, for blessing this and being with us. In your name, amen. So what's been on your mind, Tim, regarding all this?
Okay, so I always process stuff the exact same way normally. When I'm in sound mind, of course, I always process stuff the same way. So I'm going to start by defining it. So actually, I got a question for you and for all the people in the chat. Let me pull up my YouTubes. So the question is, in what ways have you felt emotionally hurt?
There's a lot of ways. It depends on when and what. Well, yesterday, I got hurt by the smallest thing, and it was interesting. I was playing Satisfactory with my community, having a lot of fun, and I had one particular community member that joined, and this community member didn't like comedy, or at least certain kinds of comedy, like sitcoms and stuff of that nature, and that bothered me. Like it downright hurt me for some reason, because I love comedy. Like everyone loves Raymond. Stupid things like SpongeBob. I grew up on SpongeBob. Things like just different types of the Golden Girls, all different types of like comedy TV programs. I grew up on that stuff, and so I guess somehow that actually managed to hurt me, because this particular person didn't really see. It wasn't that they were against comedy stuff. It was that they just didn't see like the depth in a comedic relief type of person. Like they didn't really notice they kind of were embarrassed by their community, like the way that they just kind of joked about a whole bunch of stuff. And like for me, like I always knew that someone who jokes a lot, there's a lot of depth to them you don't really typically see. So I don't know why, but that managed to like hurt me, and I felt like I had to be on the defense. And then we had like a whole conversation after that point, but that's just a very basic example of how I've been hurt, very fresh and recent. We worked through it all, but it wasn't the person's fault. It's not like the person did anything wrong. It's just I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, Kellerick said he feels hurt when he feels judged. He feels like his emotional needs won't be met, like it's pushing someone away. That's just a general thing. Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, there's so many times in life where I felt hurt too, and it's weird. It's almost like whenever I felt hurt, I've always that's been an area of insecurity for me. Like in friendships, since I didn't have friendships, anytime somebody didn't pursue me, or anytime somebody was not intentional with me, or anytime somebody took longer than a day to respond to a message of mine. Because I didn't have friends, I put more focus on the little points where somebody could offend me. It's almost like hurt and offense go hand in hand. And when you're hurt, it magnifies all the little things and make them a bigger thing than they should be, And I don't say that to invalidate people, because you could say, well, that's invalidating how people feel. No, I mean, that's what hurt is. It magnifies little things, because those little things are just remnants of a deeper rooted issue.
Yeah, because it's like what happens is like when someone gets hurt by little things, there's a whole backlog of things that were happening that were either looked over or not really properly dealt with, so that by the time that little thing happens, you'd think that they got really upset over, a dropped drink or something of that nature. But in reality, there's a whole bunch of things that they were heard about prior and never spoke about, and then suddenly this little thing was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I felt froggy, so I went on Google and I just typed in, what is emotional hurt? And there's a guy named Bolger. I don't know who that is. I'm just giving him credit because, copyright, whatever. He said, he defines emotional pain as a state of feeling broken that involved experience of being wounded, loss of self, disconnection, and critical awareness of one's more negative attributes. And I think that makes sense. I think for me, a really succinct and clear summation of it is, hurt is essentially when you don't feel valued. If you feel valued, you don't feel hurt. I'm trying to think of situations where that's not true, and I can't really think of anything. Because if you know what your value is, or if you see value in something, or if you feel valued by somebody, it's really hard to be hurt by them. And I've got an analogy that I'll bring up later, but how do you identify if somebody's coming from a place hurt? So we talked about ways that where we have felt emotionally hurt, and we just identified it. But how do you identify if somebody's just being, because some people are just, they are confrontational in an unhealthy way, and it's like they're just seeking to pursue arguments, and they have very short fuses. I mean, that's typical of other problems. But how do you know if somebody's coming from a place of hurt?
I mean, it comes down, I feel like, to how they react to it. To a situation. If you're talking to them and all of a sudden the mood shifts in the conversation, and you can tell that they're kind of suddenly defensive, or they've checked out, and prematurely. Because sometimes, people check out if it's been a long conversation, you've been with each other for the whole day. At that point, you're just tired, really. Mm-hmm. But if you're like early on and all of a sudden there's just a wall, or, they refuse to talk about certain things, that could be a sign that there's been a hurt that's been done. If you suddenly get the silent treatment, that's a sign that there's been some kind of hurt. And honestly, it may not even be really you as the problem in this situation. There could have just been a myriad of things that happened before that point, and again, that small thing turned into the shutdown because all of these other things were not properly being dealt with. Now it's all hinged upon this small action, like for instance, if you're in a conversation with someone and you say something and they get offended or they get hurt by it, they could have been noticing okay, the dishes hadn't been done and this hadn't been done and this hadn't been done. All these
little stacking offenses.
Yeah, all these stacking things. That's why I talk about how I kind of identified with the woman's brain, where everything is like this whole ball of yarn, everything is connected. I kind of identified with that because for me, if repeatedly the trash is not taken care of and I'm the one constantly washing the dishes and doing all that kind of stuff, all those things are little knots where I need to go and talk about it, but if I don't, they just kind of pile up and then something stupid causes everything to become an issue, and it really is not. And it might not even be all those little things may not even matter, it's just a perspective issue. But I feel again, that's kind of a diversion from what you were asking. Again, whether someone shuts down and the wall goes up, or they start get to angry. There's just a bunch of different signals that someone has been hurt.
Yeah, I think it's different also, based on how close you are to the person. Because if it's some
Mm,
random Joe that's walking down the street and they're acting all crazy,
yeah.
it's really easy. Like when we did the homeless ministry, there's this guy that walked around downtown, and he's a tall guy, and everybody downtown knows him. But he'll just you just like saying gibberish, and you just look, you walk past, and you give him a wider berth than other people, But then you have somebody like you, Brandon, when you responded when I hit you or when I spooked you, or like when you were telling me about how your roommates didn't clean up, and things weren't being put where they were supposed to, and you just got super agitated. I think it's different, and it's easier to identify that it's hurt when it's somebody that because you have a basis for when they're not hurt. Like what they're normally like, the way they normally respond to things. So that article that I was reading has 5 signs of emotional pain. I guess I should copy this to the chat also. So 5 signs of emotional pain are, well, it's not going to let me. It's too many characters. Okay, I'll just have to tell you. So the first sign of emotional pain is a personality change. So their personality changes. For instance, if you, Brandon, smack me in the face with your jacket, that's not a normal thing. At least I hope not. That'd be a really weird friendship. Number 2, they're agitated. They seem uncharacteristically angry, anxious, agitated, or moody. Right? So I'm thinking about the riots that are going on right now. They seem uncharacteristically angry, anxious, agitated, or moody. There are people out there that are probably normal, good fathers and mothers in neighborhoods, friends, people that work for charities and nonprofits and stuff that are doing these right things. I'm sure they're part of that, but they're uncharacteristically angry, anxious, agitated, or moody. And these are also personality changes. It's when they're being shoved into a position that's beyond their level of growth, right? Third sign of emotional pain, a withdrawal. They are withdrawn. They withdraw or isolate themselves from other people. Like a lot of those people that somebody on the stream a few weeks ago said, I destroy every relationship that I touch. So I tend not to pursue relationships. That's indicative of hurt, and that's indicative of unhealed or unhealed hurt. Or those people that just have given up on society, poor self-care. That's a sign of emotional pain. You know how people just get despondent and they just think, I give up, which is number 5 is hopelessness. So hopelessness breeds poor self-care. Like I don't see value in myself. I'm not worth it. I'm hurt. I'm not worth it. Like I said earlier, I personally define hurt as feeling devalued. So if I'm not worth anything, or if I believe I'm not worth anything, why would I take care of it? Much like a car. If you buy a 94 beater, you're not going to take as good of care of that car as your brand new 2020 Porsche Carrera. It's different levels of a care. Passive aggressive. That's also really good.
Yeah.
I'll probably put that up there.
That's me.
Passive aggressive Brown.
Yeah, when I get hurt, I've had to unlearn this, but I've definitely I've been passive aggressive. I think I've gotten better with that. Sometimes with the recent time when I got hurt, I got really psychoanalytic. It just started really diving into the why do you think that way and all this kind of stuff, and just a little bit overboard with that. But I understand the passive aggressiveness, because that's how I got away with things growing up. Is I couldn't be completely aggressive because that would have not ended well, and I couldn't be passive because I had feelings. So I had strong feelings that I couldn't oppress. So I kind of found this awkward in between called passive aggressiveness, where I said things with a smile and with laughter, and still, so to this point, I will have some passive aggressiveness where someone will be acting in a certain way, and it'll get me irritated, and I'll ask them some kind of question is like, you good? And what I'm really saying is stop, but I'm saying instead, you good? Like, because it would be received a little bit better. Gotta work on that. Anyways, I don't mean to derail you.
I kind of feel like passive aggressive is really unique because I think that's like being right on the precipice of responding to it and actually confronting it, and fearing responding to it and confronting it. It's like I kind of want to address this, but I'm afraid to, and put everything into it. So I'm just kind of skirt around it.
It's like offensive defensiveness. It's like I'm going to bring up something because I can't just let it go by, but I also don't want to be hurt. So I'm going to say it in such a way that you'll just hopefully laugh and get what I'm saying and will change. But most of the time, no one gets it, and so it just instead keeps running me over and over again, or it really pisses someone off, and then I lose a friend. I had that experience with my close friend Dan, where we were both pursuing the same girl, and I got passive aggressive with him, and he was like, "Brandon, stop." I mean, there was a lot more to the conversation than just that, let me tell you, but it was the first time I realized, okay, I need to be more direct, and I also, because, hey, I'm going to get hurt, but I'm also going to learn. But anyways, I continue, Tim.
It's kind of like ninja dating. Kellerick, do you know what ninja dating is? In our circle of friends, back before people were all booed up, I think that's what people say these days.
Booed up. Oh.
Yeah. There was that fear to fully commit and say, hey, do you want to go out with me? Or do you want to go on a date? So what they would do is they would tentatively try and get around the person and make it a ninja date, where there was not the full on commitment of dating, but it's almost like you kind of wanted to address it to play how the water was. It's almost like you wanted to find out how it was going to go before it actually went. And I feel like being passive aggressive is just like that.
Not helpful. Yeah. It feels like it would be. You would think it would be, but typically it doesn't end well.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about how we had situations wherein we felt hurt. And before we go into the meat of this, I'm just kind of curious, when you felt hurt during your situation, how did you respond in the moment? How did you respond shortly after? And looking back on it now, would you respond the same way?
So, just going back to that last situation, like the way when the statement was made that comedic relief characters are embarrassing, I don't like them, they just seem to derail the situation too many times, I responded with, like I said, psychoanalyst. Like I was just like, well, you just don't understand. Actually, it wasn't even, there was a little bit of psychoanalyzing, but there was also defensiveness. It was just like, you just don't understand. Comedic relief people have a lot of depth to them, and if you knew that, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying about it, and you wouldn't be attacking my favorite genre of comedy, like entertainment. Which is, I mean, it was more passive aggressive than that, and therefore it came off as psychoanalyzing of like, hey, like, in reality, actually, these people have a lot of depth to them. How I would have better respond to that, or what would have been better, it was like, your question was, how did I respond? What was the second part?
In the moment.
In the moment.
Shortly after, and looking back on it.
Okay, so shortly after that point, then I began to realize that I got angry because of the way I got hurt by the way the person mentioned comedic relief. So then I began to, through my hurt and anger, began to listen to what the person was saying and to tell them that I was bothered by it. Instead of skirting around the fact that I was bothered by it, just come out and be direct about it. Is how I handled it after I first responded passive-aggressively and psychoanalyzing. And now, looking back at it, it would have been better just to kind of, like, opened more communication about that and just like, hey, whoa, what? like being direct, like, hey, this bothered me, what do you mean, and just kind of start right there rather than to begin instead like trying to like, because I was, in a way, I was trying to be controlling with this person. Like, I wanted them to think the way I thought about comedy, and about the depth of it, and I wanted to like save them from their blunder of thinking that comedic relief people have no depth to them. Instead of just like being more compassionate and just kind of diving into it. So it's like, in this case, it wasn't like a big extreme situation that's like, oh man, I could have really done better. But of course I could have fine-tuned that and started with more grace than immediately start with, I need to change your mind. Save you from the error of your ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I think personally, when you're in a moment and you actually have the capacity and you feel hurt, that's something where, like I said earlier, the insecurity comes up, or something, a root has been hit, or like it's almost like a water line in the ground. You're digging. Oh, I hit a water line, and it just creates a big mess. It's kind of very descriptive of how it works, right? So for me, in moments where I felt hurt, I obviously responded in a way that was indicative of the 5 signs: personality change, agitation, withdrawing from people, poor self-care, hopelessness, some of those, any combination of those. And then shortly thereafter, how did I respond? That was the opportunity point where I could say, okay, I'm going to reflect on what happened and how I responded. I'm either going to address the root issue and improve it and move on, or I'm just going to put it on the shelf until it becomes a wall of hurt. And looking back, there's a clear difference from that point on. It's like a fork in the road, right?
Yeah.
There's a clear difference between how you view that hurt now. So if you just put it on the wall right now, thinking about it still pisses you off. Right now, looking back on it still has you angry at those people. Right now, looking back at it just still gets you that tightness in your chest or that tingle in your spine that makes you feel embarrassed. However, if you have dealt with it, you look back at it and you're like, oh, well, I felt this way and here's what was going on. And you can see it for what it really is, right? Yeah. And that's where maturity comes from. Because if I think back when I was super young, I got into a fight on the playground with this guy named Adam Sane. And I don't even know what we got into a fight about. And he probably doesn't even remember it. So Adam, if you're watching, it's okay. I love you now, man. But my friend Brian Fissel jumped in and, they started fighting. Looking back on it, it's like, okay, well, what was my motivation for that? Afterwards, I was like, okay, I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not going to address it with Adam because he was part of the cool club back then. And I had a lot of insecurity around that. Now looking back on it, it's like, well, we were kids. Yeah. We were both probably just upset about something, or we were just trying to look strong in front of the girls, or I don't know, something like, oh, that's what it was. I had said something to his girlfriend and I was just like talking to her and he got, defensive about it, and he came over, pushed me, and we started fighting.
Oh man.
And so it was the machismo, the defense or whatever.
The machismo.
I don't know. That's probably the wrong word. If somebody has a better word, tell me.
It's an interesting word. I love that word.
Yeah. But looking back at it, it's like, okay, I can just see it for what it is. And that's because since then I've dealt with it in a healthy way. Right. And I think the key there is that time has passed between now and then. And I've had sufficient time and sufficient grace and sufficient support and help to get to where I am with that. Now, there are other things that I'm still dealing with.
Well, I mean, time, yes, but then also you've had people that have come along your way to help change your perspective as well. Like, because time, the big misnomer is to say, well, time heals all wounds. Well, that's not true. Time can, if also paired with time, you have counseling, you have friendships, you have support groups, all that kind of stuff, and you have God. You have all those different factors involved. Yeah, then with time, things will get better. But if you just have time, period, and nothing else, then time festers all wounds and it gets worse. Because then it's just it's like your mind is like a wine. The longer it sits, either the richer it becomes or the more spoiled it will become, if it's more like a milk in that case.
A milk?
Like a milk. I don't know.
Milk.
Okay,
don't read this yet. I'm typing it in because there's not enough spaces.
Okay. Well, as you're writing that out, I thought of a more real example of a time that I've been hurt, how I handled it, and where we're at now. I had a friend that was a big part of my life for a couple of years, actually, not too long, very fresh. Um, and this friend, there was a point in his life where he had some shifts in status. Got new job, new relationship, all that kind of stuff. And with all the new work and everything that he had, communication between us shifted, and we started to talk less and less. And I would begin to hear of events that he had hosted or been a part of and didn't invite me to. And that hurt because it was like, when I had all this communication, this good friendship with him, and now suddenly it's disappeared, I'm hurt. Like, why did you not think of me? Why did you not invite me? And so what ended up happening, the way I reacted, was to distance myself. And when I began to distance myself from this guy, I began to formulate hypothetical situations in my head and began to fill in the blanks with what I perceived was happening. And I never really came and attacked him because, again, who I am, I see the best in people for the most part, and I definitely, even more than that, want the best for everyone. So instead, I would withdraw and pray over the situation, and intentionally knowing that I needed to get back to talk and clear things out and figure out, is everything okay between us. And so it took me some time, but as I began to realize that I was isolating, then I began to realize, okay, I need to confront. I need to set the record straight. Are we okay? Did something happen, or you just become more busy? And so then that was in my mind for a couple of months. So just I need to set the record straight. I need to set the record straight. But, moving and everything with COVID and everything like that just kind of made things a little bit more sluggish to getting around to doing that. And of course, as I'm trying to get to confronting him, there are more events that are happening I'm not invited to, which also slows down the healing process. But finally, recently, I actually did get the chance to sit down and ask, hey, how are we? Have I done anything that's offended you? Is there any reason why, you haven't invited me to things? And then, to no surprise to me, he was legitimately busy, and he just had a lot going on, too many things balancing. Now, he's married, so he's, that changes things. And so, of course, the situation was not as bad in my head as I thought it would be. And so, looking back, going back to your whole question originally, it would have been better to have confronted him sooner than later, than allowing more of those knots to form in my ball of yarn, if you will. So that way we can go back to friendly, keeping my heart open rather than closing it off and protecting myself from a perceived threat. So I wanted to bring that one up because I think that one is more, it hits home more than my yesterday example. so anyways, I'm kicking it back to you.
That's perfect though, because I wanted to talk about extremes for a second, because I was reading this other article, and I know it's chunky here in the chat, but I just want to read it off. And I didn't want to put it in Facebook chat because I don't want to feel polarized on how I view this, and there's no reference in Facebook chat, so that's why I did it in the YouTube chat. But anyways, it says, dwelling on the possible causes of emotional pain is more likely to exacerbate than ameliorate it. So dwelling on the possible causes of pain is likely to exacerbate than ameliorate it. This is especially true when the hidden purpose of examining the possible causes is to assign blame, right? And we see that going on a lot on so many different sides on social media right now about everything.
Now, can we take a second and what's the word? Break this down into layman's terms, because the way that this is written has some college level wording that I'm missing here. I'm like, it's right over my head a little bit. So
Okay.
let's break this down. Dwelling on the possible causes of emotional pain is more likely to exacerbate than ameliorate it. So how can we word this in a more down to earth way?
Okay,
Dwell-
so that's easy. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm just trying to if you got a better way, go ahead, because you sound like you have a better way of speaking that out.
Basically, it says dwelling on possible causes of emotional pain is more likely to increase the pain than fix it, right?
Okay.
So essentially, explaining away why I think you might be like this, or why A, B, and C, all the statistics say this, so this must be true.
And
Saying,
that's
yeah,
where it connects into this is especially true when the hidden purpose of examining the possible causes is to assign blame. So you're looking at what happened, but instead of trying to fix the issue, you're trying to figure out why it validates your pain. And so now you're trying to figure out all of that so you can uh, assign the blame to someone else. Like,
mhm.
you are responsible for my pain. This is your fault. And this is why you hurt me. Like, your character here and your character there. And all of this is why I'm in pain. Nothing to do with me and my decisions, all to do with you. I'm putting the blame on you. Is that a correct assessment?
Kind of. Let me put it into an applicable situation. So, when a couple streams ago, I talked about how I spooked you and you hit me with your jacket, and I was like, ah. So, if I dwelt on the possible causes of that, I could say or I'm sorry, if you saw that I was upset, you could say, oh, well, why are you upset with this? Because you know that you did that because you were just exhausted and it was just a reaction. You were not yourself. But you could say, oh, you feel that way because you expect me to be perfect all the time, or you were upset with me, or like you could assume all these different motives about me, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that, you assign blame to why you feel a certain way instead of actually addressing the issue itself. So, for instance, let's take Black Lives Matter, right? I could say, oh, they're doing this because of A, B, C, and D, right? And I could assume that all these different possible causes of their pain are why they're doing this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says this is especially true when the hidden purpose of examining possible causes is to assign blame. Basically, I'm trying to explain away the fact that they feel hurt instead of saying, oh, why do you feel hurt? Letting them explain it to me.
Okay, so you're essentially, let me break this down. You're trying to solve the issue without actually going to the person and solving it with them. So it's like, oh, you did this because all these list of reasons, instead of actually asking the person, why did this happen, and getting it directly from the source. You're not trying to solve it with them, you're trying to solve it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's weird because when one side does this, the other side automatically does that normally.
Hmm.
And then to go on, it says to justify blame, we tend to magnify pain. So, for instance, if I'm upset with Ariane and I feel like she's not listening to me and I'm not listening to her, we'll start grasping at little things and we'll make them bigger to prove our point.
Hmm.
Right? It says attributing blame then stimulates anger to punish the perceived offender. So as that blame is stimulating, oh, you did this, this must be your reasoning. It's just blaming. It then stimulates anger to punish the perceived offender. Biologically, the association of pain and vulnerability with anger. So a lot of people they don't really understand true vulnerability, right? They don't understand how to process pain. So biologically, the association of pain and vulnerability with anger is almost irresistible. Right. So it like Adam on the playground, he was super young, right? He felt vulnerable. He felt pain because he thought that his girlfriend was endangered, or his manhood, like you're supposed to take up for the woman, that was being infringed upon, right? So anger it makes it almost, hey Nancy, it's almost it's one of the first things that comes to surface when we don't renew our mind, right? Anger has a survival based analgy. I don't know how to say that word. That's almost a very sketchy word. It looks like a sketchy word. Analgesic, whatever, and amphetamine effects. It temporarily numbs pain and provides a surge of energy and confidence to ward off the threat or perceived threat. But each repetition of this process reinforces perceived damage and vulnerability by making defense seem more necessary. That is huge. So let me read
Yes.
that again. Each repetition of this process reinforces the perceived damage and the vulnerability by making defense seem more necessary. So the more I do this, the more I feel like I need to do this, right?
Okay.
And it builds that wall of hurt. So think of those people that have never had a true friend listen to them, right?
Yeah.
Then over time, they start to build that shell, and it gets thicker and thicker, right? The defense gets thicker and thicker, and then they start to be hopeless. Oh, nobody wants to actually hear how I feel. Nobody cares about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or think about animals, dogs, right? So it says the repetition of this process reinforces perceived damage and vulnerability by making defense seem more necessary. Think about little stupid small dogs like Chihuahuas and stuff, right?
Stupid.
You know how they'll get hit once and then they'll cower?
Yeah.
The same thing, right? We do that emotionally. Think about abusive households, how the kids grow up in an abusive household and somebody is playing around with them, just like play fighting, and they're like, oh, they have trauma, you know?
I wanna now before we go too deep in this, I know we've already gone through most of these segments and come to the end, but I still feel like there's all these words that were used in this that I can almost address their meaning, but yet I'm still missing them. Do you mind if we take one more second to go through the ones past the first one that we went over, just to kind of break that down into layman's terms each time once more before we, because it will make going forward from here a lot easier.
Sure.
So I just want to go back to justify blame, we tend to magnify pain. To justify blame, we tend to magnify the pain. So, okay, so to justify the blame, so like I'm blaming someone and I feel right because this pain that I experience, we take that pain, we focus on it. It's like I stubbed my toe, not a big deal. But in the case where I'm hurt and someone might have, I don't know, let's just make it into a weird scenario. Like I stubbed my toe, someone's laughing at me because of my pain. I get hurt. Now I'm going to make that toe pain turn into a broken toe to justify what I'm going through. Even though my toe is fine, the fact that I'm hurt by them laughing at me, I'm going to amplify this pain in my mind to like, oh my God, this is such terrible pain. Why are you laughing at me? To justify it. Is that a good
yeah, so
one for one?
Dude, the other day Arian and I were bike riding and I didn't really want to go, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go. And we had this really huge hill down the road and we were going up it, and I did something wrong and it kind of hurt my inner thigh up high, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
It hurt that area, and so I'm like, wow, this kind of hurts. And I just passively made the comment, and she says that I can be a crybaby about pain, which I can. And so she didn't take me seriously. And because she didn't take me seriously, I got my feelings hurt, and it started to hurt a lot more than it was before, if you catch my drift. It's like, oh, so you don't believe that I'm hurt? I'm going to make this a bigger deal until you believe that I'm hurt. And if you still don't believe it, I'm going to get pissed off at everything. I'm going to make you have a bad day until you believe that this really hurts.
Okay, I think I got that one drilled in my head. So then attributing blame then stimulates anger to punish the perceived offender. Attributing blame then stimulates the anger to punish the perceived offender. So now that I've attributed the blame to you, and this is why you did it, then it makes me more angry, so that way I'm going to then somehow punish you via, again, like silent treatment or something of that nature, in order to punish you for how dare you do this thing to me, or yell at you, for instance, another way of doing it. Is that another one for one there?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. And then,
well, like to continue my situation with Ariane, attributing blame then stimulates anger to punish the perceived offender. So, I was blaming her for the way that I felt, like insecure, that like, who cares if she believed me or not? I didn't care. I shouldn't have cared, but I'm blaming her, and it made me more and more angry. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get angry at you. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to give you the silent treatment. I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to make it a bigger deal, so that you know I'm going to get you.
Okay,
You know.
okay. We're driving this home. I'm getting this. Biologically, the association of pain slash vulnerability with anger is almost irresistible. Irresistible? Yeah.
Hmm.
The association of pain slash vulnerability with anger. So if I feel pain, I also typically feel anger. Is that what that's saying essentially?
Yeah.
Okay. Anger has a survival based and something analogous and
Anal
ampath-
something.
something and amphetamine effects. So it's
Analgesic.
so it's
Analgesic.
fight, flight, fright, whatever, fight or flight essentially, or freeze. So okay, it temporarily numbs the pain and provides a surge of energy and confidence to ward off the threat, which that makes sense. When I feel angry, I also feel more prepared to deal with the threat than I do if I'm not angry sometimes. But each repetition of this process reinforces the perceived damage and vulnerability by making defense seem more necessary. So when we get angry, when we get hurt, we get angry, we attach blame. The blame, and we take the situation that happened and make it so much worse so that we can justify the anger, and then we just continue to build, and we're getting angry at each other, we're yelling at each other, or we're giving each other silent treatment, and then that then just increases our desire to not want to open up next time or to get more angry next time or something, to either keep you from hurting me by attacking or by walling off or by running away. And so then it becomes worse and worse the more it doesn't properly get addressed. Is that essentially what's being driven by what this guy's saying? It's a cycle that gets worse
Yeah.
and worse every revolution.
Absolutely. I mean, like he said earlier, or like it was noted earlier, you can tell somebody's hurt by personality change, agitation, withdrawal, hopelessness, and poor self care, which is exactly what this looks like as it manifests and get bigger and bigger. Like the first time that somebody lied. Okay, so let's take a girl, and let's say that her boyfriend cheats on her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The first time that really hurts. But if it happens a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, and it's not addressed, and she doesn't learn healthy boundaries, and she doesn't learn how to process that properly, if she just pushes it down, she starts to believe, oh, well, the common denominator is me. I must not have value. And that transitions into poor self care, transitions into hopelessness. I'm never going to find a guy that's going to love me. It might manifest in agitation, in man hating, or being an unhealthy feminist. I mean, that might not be the right way, so don't crucify me about that if you're watching and
Dang it, I was preparing the cross and everything.
But yeah, that's essentially what happens. All this stuff manifests as it gets bigger and bigger. Kellerick said he fell off his bike and his brother and his dad started laughing and he felt bad. This was when he was a child. And then he said, I mean, I understand that was like either their coping mechanism or they thought my pain was nothing to them.
Or it could also be, I know sometimes people laugh at things because they've been through it. And so, like, because they've been through it, they find it more funny, even though it could be something very traumatic or something, but yet they've been through it, and that's how laughing is their coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I have an unhealthy habit sometimes of laughing at things that I should not laugh at because I don't know how to respond. Like, for instance, oh god, I might hear some kind of tragic story or something, and I feel awkward, so I laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Like I laugh at awkward things sometimes. I communicate with my laughter, but then that can be perceived. Like for instance, okay, I'll give you for instance. I had a customer come in to the walking company once with a pair of clogs, or maybe this, or no. She got a pair of shoes of some sort. There was scratches on them, and she wanted to return them because there were scratches on the heel or something. And it's like, I need to return this. And it was not whatsoever justifiable to return. It was natural wear and tear to the shoe. She was angry as all get out at me and the walking company or whatever. And I just I end up laughing because it was just the ridiculousness of the
Oh
situation.
boy.
Yeah, I laughed because it's just like I can't take that back, kind of thing. And of course, that did not make the situation any better. And because it's just like I was feeling one, I was angry. I was kind of scared because I was like, I don't know what. I've had lots of bad experiences with customers. Like they'll go above and beyond, in their anger, and what can I do? There's nothing I can do about it. Like I have my friend Eric wants me to work sometimes in the restaurant business. But he has the ability to turn off his emotions and just disconnect when a customer gets angry. I haven't learned that magical ability. I can't just disconnect. It's not my problem. I'm not going to deal with it. So when a customer comes at me, it's like, oh no, what am I going to do? I have to deal with this problem. Ah! So I laugh. I laugh because I'm nervous, because I'm angry, because of whatever. Am I truly finding it funny? Not really, but like that's that passive aggressiveness. Not really quite sure how to handle him. Ha ha ha, like please stop.
Yeah, so I'm in this weird situation where I'm learning to be myself in front of people, but I'm also learning not to say weird things in front of people. Because for the longest time, I wouldn't be myself and everything was so analyzed and composed, and it's almost like I was running for president. I would only say the good stuff to people and they wouldn't genuinely know who I am. But the more comfortable I got with somebody, the more unfiltered I got. And all my ignorant sides came out. Like I would say things without thinking. Like if I really took the filter off and I said things that were offensive, it's super embarrassing. It's I don't say what I actually mean, and offense happens. And it's weird trying to find that middle ground, but that's all part of maturing through a place where you're not super mature, I guess. And that's especially with all the bickering and stuff that's going on Facebook and lack of compassion that's going on, is people need to understand that this is a huge growth phase for a really large sum of people.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just explain people's hurt and emotions away, especially on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, one side is really hurting right now, and they need more compassion than the other side. Somebody posed it to me the other day, like, somebody's in the hospital. Am I going to go and talk about how I broke my foot and it's been recovering for 5? No. I'm going to go in there and say, oh, I'm sorry that you're, I don't know, getting a pacemaker put in or something like that. Kellerick said, the thing is with mothers, they can be too overprotective and sometimes overdramatic, which can be annoying. Fathers can be too controlling, emotionally detached, which can be annoying.
Yeah. It can happen. I had a mother that was definitely overprotective and overdramatic at times. The only thing I know to do with that situation is just to forgive her, to love her, to understand, what she's come through to get to this point, and to sit and to listen to her best that I can. Sometimes it's obviously not enough in the situation, that's what really sucks, because of just the amount of pain that she's been through, bringing her up to this point, but. I feel you there, Kellerick. And fathers being too controlling and emotionally detached, like my dad was not specifically emotionally detached, but he also was not emotional in general. So it's not like he was detaching from the situation. You would find him at a bar, and he was much more vibrant at a bar than he was at home, kind of guy. Wasn't like that, but he also did not know. He was more mechanical, analytical, and mathematic than I was. So, it hasn't been until he's gotten into his 60s and 50s that he started to have emotions ooze out of him. Unfortunately now I have a much more robust relationship with my dad than I did when I was growing up and, was more formidable, but, better late than never. I guess that's the part where forgiveness is super important. Yeah, not everyone, definitely. But yeah, that's where forgiveness is super important because, people can get better with time, and forgiveness unlocks the door to be able to enjoy the better part of them down the road than if you were to be holding on, like talking about hurt right now, holding on to the hurt today and refusing to let go of that hurt disallows you to enjoy them in the future when they begin to grow and continue to recognize the pain that they put you through.
Mhm.
So
Well, also on the receiving side, I think it's also really important to give people that space
yeah,
because being married, you're really tasked to, in your vows, especially, it says that there's a part in there about long suffering. And in the Bible, it talks about mourning with those who mourn. You know, you're not supposed to explain away people's feelings. You're not supposed to fix it for them. You're supposed to love them, be patient, and be kind. And I think it's really easy when somebody is hurting to try and explain away their hurt because it makes you feel uncomfortable. And it's really easy to try and, like it was talking about earlier, blaming and shaming and stuff. And it's like, oh, you're feeling hurt. Well, you're making me feel this way. And here's A, B, and C, why. Right? Like the Black Lives Matter movement. You could argue, oh, well, I know that you're hurting, but the riots are really bad. Yeah, the riots are bad. But why? Who am I to say, okay, well, you're coming from a place of hurt. Well, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about how you're in positioning and affecting me with these riots.
let's
And
not talk about that hurt. Let's talk about my hurt.
yeah, it's not
I'm
about
more
that.
important in this situation. I mean, the heck, like you got to
Yeah,
realize
yeah.
that's where, and we've talked about this in previous thought rates. That's where it's really important to have a strong friend base and relationship with God, because then you can get yourself off of focus of yourself and the hurt that you're feeling, and instead outwardly focus on the hurt that other people are feeling and to shoulder that pain with them. But if you are isolated and you have no connection to God, no one, you're not bringing out your concerns and stuff with Him, then you're gonna start instead overlooking other people's pains, other people's problems, and then that just kind of perpetuates the issue that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. I have a friend who is a chronic warrior. And by chronic warrior, I
He's
mean
a
like,
warrior.
yeah. So whenever I talk to this person, there's always this underlying feeling of, I wonder what kind of issue they're going to have today. And sometimes it's like, I don't know how I'm going to navigate this because it makes me feel heavy. And even if I know the answer, or I think I know the answer, let me highlight that. Even if I think I know the answer, even if I think I know why, I go into it thinking, I hope they don't. Oh man, I just want to. I want this situation to be peaceful. And when they bring it to me, I have to think, okay, well, am I going to be a good friend to this person? And am I going to mourn when they mourn? Am I going to go through it with them, even if it takes me years to go through this with them? Or am I going to say, you know what? Tired of your situation. You're making me feel this way. This hurts. This is why don't you fix your problem? Why don't you fix your problem? And when I do that, that puts them in a really unique position. It's like, okay, well, am I actually not going to deal with my problems and feel like I'm supported and loved and actually get help with this? Because, like the Bible says, a brother is born in adversity, right? Your relationships are fashioned as you move forward through adversity with one another, through crap, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, am I going to help this person or am I going to create space and not help that person? So what they're thinking is, okay, is this person going to actually be there for me and shoulder this with me, or are they going to leave me alone? Because it's never, if they really have an issue like that, it's never going to go away. They're still going to have to deal with it. So am I going to choose to come into their life and say, okay, well, even though this inconveniences me, it's not about me. It's about you. It's about you feeling hurt. It's about you feeling supported. It's about you healing, period.
There's like a couple things though I'm picking out of that I want to kind of bring balance to. Like one, like there's going to be times where you're not going to be able to shoulder all the pain that they're experiencing anyways. Where you're going to have to make that distinction, be like, hey, like this is bothering me. Like this is something that you've been going through for a very long time, and I've been with you through it the whole time. But at some point, there has to be a perspective shift, because this is weighing me down, and I need you to work on this with me or we need to just kind of talk it out because I'm gonna need a perspective shift too. Because there might come a point in time where God might be wanting you to reach out and be like, hey, you've been going through this same repetitive issue time and time again. It's time to make a shift. Or it also could be a time where it's like, okay, we just need to be quiet and be there with that person. So it's like, it'd be important to pay attention. Like, if you're being bothered, then you want to weigh, okay, is this something that I need to get a fresh perspective? We need to talk about it again with them? Or is this a time where I need to confront them, or both? Because usually they could go hand in hand. Because there's been some times where I've had some friends that kind of get stuck in a rut, and I love them and I care, but I am tired of being in this rut with them. And they need to grow. They need to move beyond this point. And then there's been some times where I've had some friends that they're in that rut, but I needed to shift my perspective, because I started to try to, and the key was, I didn't trust them. I didn't trust that they were just as interested in getting out of that rut as I was interested in them getting out of the rut, if not more. So I figured that they had laid down to die in their rut. And I had to save them. That's where I had, we've talked about, where I've had a lot of trust issues that I've had to work out of. And I was taking all of their burden and putting it onto my shoulders. So I guess the key is figuring out, if it's a perspective shift, then you would figure, then maybe it's just I don't trust them in this situation, and I'm not looking in the right places to see where the growth is happening. Or if it is an issue where they need to grow, where it's like, okay, I'm not holding on to the responsibilities, but I'm breaking for them. My heart breaks. They need to grow from this place. We need to speak up. There's subtle differences. I don't even know if I can properly explain them, but I do know that they exist. And there was another factor too, that you were mentioning, but I don't exactly remember what it was I was going to bring out about it. So I guess I'll stop there for a moment. If it comes back to me, then we'll resume. But for now.
Yeah, I'm thinking, because I still have a lot about this I want to talk about. We might have to do part 2 of this tomorrow.
Sure.
Because we're at an hour. But I think I want to close today with one statement, and it's that. Waiting for it to pop up. The greater the hurt, the greater the need and the amount of grace to be given. And I think that's really important, especially with Black Lives Matter. With so much hurt, it is completely unfair for me to assume that I can relate to what Black people have gone through. I can't. I'm never going to be able to. I'm not Black. I'm Asian, and there was some racism growing up, but I absolutely cannot relate. And I can't explain away their hurt. I can't explain away what they've gone through, and it's not compassionate for me to do that. Yeah. And it's like, well, who cares what they're doing? Yeah, there are issues with the way that it's and not just with their people protesting about it. Yeah, sure, there are issues around that, right? But that's secondary to the main cause of hurt. You're very welcome, Kelrick. You're not going to fix it by addressing the results of how they handle it. You have to fix it by giving them grace equal to the amount of hurt, right? So it's like you, Brandon. If let's say something happens to your parents, right? And you come at me, and you come over to our house, and you're just walking around, you're stomping, you're angry, you throw something, you break one of my dishes. Obviously it's not good for you to come to my house and throw down some dishes and break them.
Obviously.
But at the same time, you need grace because something really significant is going on in your life. Something had happened to your parents, right? That's exactly how what's going on with Black Lives Matter. There will come a time where you address the secondary things, but addressing that stuff right now will not fix it. That's only going to make it worse. Just like at the start, It said, attributing blame then stimulates anger to punish the perceived offender. And then it says, and the repetition of this process reinforces perceived damage and vulnerability by making defense seem more and more necessary. Right? So focusing on the secondary results of how people process unhealed hurt won't fix it. You have to give them the grace of going through that and help them through the position of hurt they're at right now. Just like we went to a friend's house yesterday or the day before, and they had rabbits, right, in cages. And they were talking about how the building beside the rabbit cages had buzzards, and what the buzzards would do is they would come on the enclosure. They would fly over, and there was this one rabbit they really favored, and they would sit on top of that rabbit's cage and like peck at it, and it would cause it trauma.
Obviously.
Right? And so you don't fix that rabbit by punishing it when it does something like bites you for reaching out trying to feed it.
Yeah.
Right? That's a secondary reaction to a more intrinsic and more like deep-rooted hurt.
Yeah.
And so you have to give it grace. Oh, yeah, they bit me, but it's because of this. We'll fix that later, but let's fix the root. Yeah. And so what they did was they took it out of that enclosure. They took it into their garage where it was a very safe environment. They gave it more love than the other rabbits because the other rabbits weren't experiencing trauma.
Yeah.
And it took time before that rabbit was able to go back to that enclosure. And they're still, what's the word? Timidity. Yeah. And that rabbit is still working through it, even though it's back in its natural thing. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly how we need to handle, not just Black Lives Matter, but any situation where we're trying to help somebody that's hurt. Yeah. You have to look at the root, give them the grace to act out and not act the way they are. Because like the 5 things earlier were changes in personality, being agitated, withdrawing, poor self-care, hopelessness. Like I have a friend who was really hurt because he got cheated on by his girlfriend of 7 years, and he withdrew. And at first it hurt my feelings that he would withdraw, not return my messages, and not come hang out. But then I had to realize the dude's really hurting. Why am I going to let myself have my feelings hurt over the way that he feels and the lack of value that he feels and the hopelessness that he feels and the lack of self-worth that he feels? Where do I have the right to say what I feel is greater than what you feel?
Yeah.
If I'm a Christian, that's absolutely not how to act. That's not what Jesus was being whipped. And it was really bad. He was nailed to a cross.
He was beaten to the point that no one could recognize him, which I can't imagine what that would take for someone to get to a place where you no longer can recognize him. We know that he endured his beard being pulled out of his face. We know that he endured the cat o' nine tails, which is a whip of some sort that the Romans used to use. We know that he had a crown of thorns put on his head and then beaten onto his head, like just whacked until it just drilled into his head. He was betrayed by one of his own disciples, and then the rest of his disciples abandoned him. And one of his disciples that to his face declared, "I will never desert you, I will never leave you," was the first to say, "I don't know who he is." And directly, just as boldly as he said he would leave, boldly did. and denied him to his face. And all of that, and then rejected by his own people, because he was Jewish, so he was rejected by the Jews to the Romans, who were Gentiles, and then received the at the time the worst form of punishment, which was to be nailed onto a cross, naked, or at least close to naked, and then had to, what was it, 3 hours or 9? No, it was more than, I feel like it was more than 3 hours, was on that cross. And still, after being punished severely for crimes he never did, thank you for falling, by the way, punished for crimes he never did, rejected by the people that his own family, his own heritage, his own people, being mocked, ridiculed, having to carry his own murder, like his own like death device to the place where he was crucified and everything, still looked down at them and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," which is pretty massive. So I feel like the most important thing to do when you hurt is to always err on the side of mercy. Because if God, if Jesus, having come in the form of a man, taking on flesh, so that he be able to understand hunger, or he be able to experience hunger and thirst.
Oh, hey, Joey.
And pain.
What's up, man?
Hey.
Thanks.
To be able to experience hunger, thirst, pain, rejection, persecution, all that stuff, and still be able to say, "I'm sorry," how much more can we do the same? So when we look at the hurt that we're experiencing from his vantage point, and also from the vantage point that we have done things that have hurt other people, how much more does this person deserve our compassion? And not pity, but compassion, understanding, love. I think that's a great way when you're dealing with hurt. Deal with it in compassion. Deal with it recognizing that I could very much so be on the other side of this. You know, the Bible talks, we hear about the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That came from the Bible. That is a direct thing, you know, and it also talks about, you know, being judged in the same way that you judge others. So unless you want to perpetuate the anger and the hurt, stop it. You can be the one to stop it. You can be the one to stop that train from rolling and be like, okay, Christ has been through more than I have, and I have been the one causing the pain too in the past. So I choose to rule mercy in this situation, to be compassionate, to do my best to understand this person's perspective, so that when I speak with compassion, grace, understanding. I feel like that's really important. Stop it. What do you mean, stop it?
Yeah, and also, you know, on the other side of things, if you think about all the crap that Jesus went through, you know, the very people that he was trying to save were the people that were torturing him and spitting on him and doing all these things, you know. And so when you're sitting in front of somebody who's hurting and they're talking to you about their hurt, and you feel like, oh, this is inconveniencing me, or what do you mean you're hurting? This is what it's like for me. And you start getting on the me train. For instance, Black Lives Matter. I just want to bring that up because that's a big contention point right now for people not having compassion or not knowing how to show compassion, right? If you think about that, there are a lot of people that look at Black Lives Matter and think, oh, well, racism's not still a thing. So why are you acting like this? Or you're causing riots. What that's not healthy. What do you mean you can't do it that way? Right? And you're thinking about all the ways that it affects you. Think about what Jesus went through. He went through all that stuff. And even though he went through all that stuff, he was like, forgive them for they know not what they do. That makes me think, okay, well, if he can go through all that and forgive them, my little bit of inconvenience that I experience navigating all this stuff with everybody, I can shut my mouth about what I'm going through and say, hey, your hurt's a lot greater than mine. You know, I don't have to defend me. Let me hear your side of the story, even though it sucks. Because it's just like that friend earlier. It's like, sorry, Brandon. This is just really big for me. It's like my friend earlier. It's like, okay, I understand how you're feeling, but I have to choose. Am I going to walk through it with you, or am I going to leave you alone to deal with it on your own? Right? And that's essentially what we do when we choose not to show compassion, when we choose not to listen, and we choose to push our own agenda, especially when it pales in comparison to the hurt that the other person's feeling.
I hope when I bring this point out that I am not missing what you said, because I've been holding on to this one thought through your whole thing, and I feel like I haven't done a good job when it comes to listening, but this is just, it hit me hard and I want to say it, so I'm gonna do this. Give me grace. But this thought, it really hit me hard. When you get hurt, um, when you're in a situation and things are happening, and let's say like we're going back to the whole thing with Black Lives Matter. If you hear stuff like that and you become afraid and you begin to give all the, well, what about this, what about that, if you're feeling fear, if you're feeling anger when someone brings up their hurt, you're still focused on yourself. You haven't moved past thinking beyond the situation. If someone brings something up to you and your first response is defense, whether it be out of anger or pride or fear, you're still self-focused. You have not moved beyond you. You're worried. You're still more so concerned about how you look, safety, or whatever. Jesus abandoned his worries and concerns for safety. He slept during storms. He allowed himself to be persecuted and murdered. Through all that, he had an understanding of his value. His value was not in people's acceptance of him. His value was not in the amount of people that followed him. His value was not in his family. His value was not in his country. His value was not in his understanding or anything that nature. His value was in God. God gave him value, and he fully and totally accepted that value as a man in human form here on earth. He accepted those things. So when you hit a situation and someone's like, hey, here's my problem, here's what I'm going through, and your response is a defense, your response is you feel a twinge of anxiety, a twinge of anger, and you want to immediately respond in some kind of defense. Well, what about all lives matter? What about whatever? Like, if that is your knee-jerk reaction, that's still self-focused. That's not how Christ would react. He would be so convinced in his value. We can get to a place where we are so convinced in our value outside of our work, outside of the amount of people that like us and follow us, outside of our family, outside of our country, that someone could be spitting on our face and it wouldn't change our value. We wouldn't be bothered or concerned or worried, because we knew that our value is greater than that, and we can respond with compassion to that very person that absolutely hates us. So I know I felt that really hard, because I maybe that's also come out of the fact that I talked to you about this earlier, Tim. I've been watching stuff with Dan Moeller again, and so I've been like really like, just eating these things up that he's been through. I'm just like, so I don't know. I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Yeah, dude, I think that's perfect, and I think it's all about self-awareness. You know, there's a lot of people that think that their facts are actually facts, and they're not. They think that facts are facts because it's real to them and it's what they believe to be true. But just because you believe something's true doesn't mean it's a fact. It's what you believe to be true, you know? Just a lot. What you were saying about having a foundation in Jesus and just knowing who you are and knowing what you think. Guys, if what you think is really true, like we said last stream, I think it was Monday, if what you think is true is actually true, you don't have to really defend it.
Yeah, right.
It's going to come to the surface anyways.
Yep.
So if I'm right in an argument with my wife, if I defend it, all I do is make her a loser or a winner, or make me a loser or a winner. That's all that's going to do. You know, we have to jump on the same train going in the same direction. It's like, okay, well, I might be wrong, but let's talk about this. Let's go in the same direction.
Yeah.
You know what? I submit to you my pride. I submit to you my, just my pride. And I'm willing to be wrong because you're more valuable than my pride. And that's really all you have to communicate. Who cares if you're wrong? So what if you're wrong about so many things in your life, right? It's just pride where you have to defend being right or wrong. Who cares? There's so much stuff that you believe right now that from now and 10 years down the road are going to actually turn out to be false.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get there by defending something that
Your value
Yeah.
is not in your knowledge. I think it's really important to state that, you know, we talk about the practical ways of getting to a place of security, but ultimately I feel like it is really important that your foundation is Jesus, is God, because God loves us and approves of us when no one else does. He builds value into us. He gives us the strength to love when we feel like we have no love left within us. He gives us peace when we feel like there's no peace in the situation. When everything says you should be afraid, he's not afraid. And he gives us the strength when we call on him, when we pull on him, when we earnestly seek him. He gives us the strength necessary to stand in peace, the peace that passes all understanding. When you make Jesus your foundation, it doesn't matter what country you're in, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, it does not matter what knowledge you possess, whether you're very brilliant or not very brilliant at all. It doesn't matter. Your value is no longer in so many things that could be here today and gone tomorrow. You can have an aneurysm and suddenly all the knowledge you had, whoop, gone. You can, suddenly money missing from the bank because someone's robbed you. You can lose your job. You can lose people. You could have people that suddenly hate you and want nothing to do with you all of a sudden. But if your identity, if your foundation is Christ, he's never going to change, which means your value also never changes. It is solid, and you can then have the strength necessary to be compassionate, to listen to what people are saying, to hear someone yelling at you and still be at peace in that moment, to have someone literally killing you and still be at peace. All that comes out of being in a relationship with Christ, making Christ be your foundation, because he loves you. He endured all kinds of trials and tribulations, all many opportunities to be hurt, all many opportunities where he could have been hurt for all we know, but he forgave it all, and he called on God to forgive us, even in the moment where he was literally dying on a cross. He still chose to forgive us when everything abandoned him in that moment. Still forgave us. That's what I want my foundation to be. And I think like that's a really good foundation to have when it comes to handling hurt, because then he approves of you. He loves you unconditionally. If he can handle being rejected by everyone, if he can handle going through excruciating pain, if he can handle all the things that he did and still forgive us then, he can absolutely forgive us now and continue to do so, not being under those circumstances anymore, being at the right hand of God, enthroned. So I feel like that's why it's important to have him as a foundation when handling all that. I'm sorry, I'm getting I'm getting excited.
Yeah. Now, also, I'm going to say this, and we should probably wrap it up here in a second. But there are some people out there, and which is okay, and it's just what we believe. But there are some people who don't believe in Jesus and don't believe in God, and it's really hard to navigate all this stuff and navigate compassion, navigate hurt when you don't have something as the basis, and love happens naturally when you have something that you want to protect and you see value in something, right? And when I say love, I mean protection, being kind to it, patient for it, forgiving its faults, suffering with it, like if a dog comes up to you and pees on the floor, you're angry at it for a second if it's your dog, but then you're right back to, oh, good boy, But for us, me and Brandon, we believe in Jesus, and that's who he is. He is love, and he's the model that we use for that. If you don't have that model, I would still look at 1 Corinthians 13. Even if you don't believe in Jesus, which, as I said, is okay. If you're against religion, we are too. That's okay. Look up 1 Corinthians 13, and if you don't care to follow Jesus, follow what it says there about being patient, being kind, expecting the best of others, not being puffed up yourself. That's how you navigate hurt. That's how you navigate compassion. That's how you navigate relationships. And it's ultimately how you navigate purpose in life. So just for those of you that can't or don't want to or just don't relate to us coming from a position of, hey, Jesus this, Jesus that, that's my recommendation.
Oh, I just realized my green screen is really starting to show. Oh, well, we'll get that fixed for next time. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We will be broadcasting again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if there's anything that we didn't get to cover today that you want us to kind of go over more, please let us know in the comments below, or send us email, thoughtrate@gmail.com. We'd love to hear whatever your questions are, anything related to this or something else entirely. And also, I mean, like, we have a Discord group, which you can join us in, and we can talk to you directly during tomorrow's show. So we'd love to have you. If there's anything on your mind at all, let us know. We'll get you the information you need. If you've not done so already, make sure to follow us on YouTube, or subscribe to us there, because we like to take these videos and edit them for you. And so just make sure to do that. And I want to thank you guys for watching. We will see you again tomorrow, Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have a good night.